Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today we are taking a look at an episode with an utterly deceitful title. Except this is the spoiler-free review, so I can't tell you exactly why it's so deceitful. Anyhow, I really think that the episode will settle a bit of the grumbling that has been going on in the Mando fandom about filler episodes and plot development. Without saying too much, this episode expertly takes nearly half of all the dangling plot threads from Season 1 and carries them off in a fistful of plot development. Now, let's talk terminology for a bit. I am sure you all know what member berries are. We saw baskets full of them on Tatooine back in that first episode. However, I would swear that there was only one member berry in this whole episode. That is with 100 little reminders of things that came before in Star Wars. These things from before are there, but they are not member berries in my estimation. The battered female droid that we see quietly performing her function, the statue quietly taking up the background that the camera never focuses on, the old troop carrier that comes in handy later. These all could have very easily been member berries, but they weren't. In fact, the only member berry I think I noted was a sound clip that I am 90% certain was reused file from the very first trilogy. So, the deal is that we need a new name. What do you call a carefully crafted, essential part of the plot that is also something that has been used previously in the franchise and is put in there deliberately to give the fans sort of a callback? That question aside, this wasn't generally a very indulgent episode. The first fight scene in the episode starts off by reminding you that this scene is science fantasy and not science fiction. The lead-up to the fight scene is a recreation of the lead-up to another famous fight scene in another high fantasy work, specifically J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit. Now, I won't say that the writer stole the scene, because the scene itself is very generic. Bad guy doing bad guy things right before the swift arm of justice descends and turns their bodies cold and hard as stone. When the captive was panicking, I got a distinct Bilbo Baggins vibes, I'm just saying. And to be fair, there's nothing indulgent about the lead-up scene, but there is everything indulgent about the fight scene that followed. That's what I'm talking about here when I'm saying indulgent. The hero swoops in and single-handedly takes out all the baddies. I don't count this as a spoiler because there wasn't a moment from the time that the baddies started arguing about their booty that you doubted what was going to happen to them. This was a classic Western fight scene, and I got the strongest feeling that it wasn't all that choreographed, that the directors just told the hero to get in there and do whatever the heroic thing was. Then the captive got second breakfast, or possibly 11sies, and the show moves on. As usual, the Mando is looking for repairs to his ship. I mean, the Razor Crest is mostly repairs at this point. We get some touching and endearing scenes with the Mando and Baby Yoda that shows that, first of all, Mando's dad's skills have advanced by leaps and bounds since the first episode of this series, and second, that even with that, his dad's skills still need a lot of work. Again, there's a series of scenes in this episode that show that they're playing fast and loose with time. And I don't know if you'd call that a memberberry or a callback. You know, there's the great debate about how long Luke actually spent training on Dagobah and how long Han and Leia were in the Falcon, and does the Falcon have a secondary, slower hyperdrive? You get a sequence of events a lot like that, where on the one hand you could argue that the scenes don't take very long at all. On the other hand, it is the other side of the planet, and a lot of stuff did get done off screen, but then there's how long does digestion take for this species in this universe, and I know it could just be the way the story was told, but this deliberate and obvious warping of time made it really feel like they were hanging a lampshade on the fact that time flows strangely in the Star Wars universe, as it were. Then we get to the planet, and again, all this happens on the planet where the repairs are going to be done to the Razor Crest, and as often happens, the director gets some screen time in this show. We've had What's-His-Name show up in the X-Wing, and all of that. Now, the director of this episode is shamelessly self-indulgent, and I don't blame them one bit. They must have put that indulgence in the contract, because the first on-planet scene is just the director fulfilling every fan's fantasy of grabbing Baby Yoda and cooing over him and talking to him for a while Mando looks on with bemused patience from his helmet. We explore the world a bit and get some top-notch world building. Then, of course, the side quest starts. Now, here's the part of the show where the show will try to satisfy everyone who isn't in it for the character growth. A lot of us fans are watching for and consider the real plot of the show to be what is happening inside of Din Djarin. The plot is advanced every time Din gives up a prejudice, softened towards his fellow creatures, or shows honor up to or even exceeding his code. Him welcoming Paley's pit droids, not just with grudging acceptance, but with real and obvious fondness, was plot advancement. Him gently reasoning with Mrs. Frog instead of barking out orders was plot advancement. Him showing that he can still be just as hard and dangerous to a side character in this episode as he was in the very first episode before he met Baby Yoda and started softening, is plot development, and the looming of a past threat large enough to satisfy most of us. But there are all you weirdos to consider who actually enjoy things like explosions, dark ominous villains, tormented mad scientists, high operatic music rising in the background as the Imperial Big Bad sweeps past the rows of dangerous foes with a grim smile on his face, and so much cachet and whatever you call that confidence that I honestly can't remember whether or not he's wearing a cape. It just felt like he was wearing a cape. Alright, and do you know what I say to all that? Yeah! I like that too, and I was thrilled to see some version of that kind of thing in this episode. Not really a spoiler, but I really must air one tiny nitpick with this episode that is bothering me, and has been bothering me since I started this review. I didn't notice it because I avoid learning the titles of the episodes until afterwards, because I don't want to know anything about the episode going in. I want to go in cold. So when I went back and discovered the title for writing up a review, there is a massive contradiction between what actually happens in the episode, as awesome as all of that was in the episode. Pow! Pow! Pew! 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 There was so much pew! 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 In this episode. But the pew pew did not match the title. Oh, look, there's this whole rack of Chekhov's gun on that wall as they enter the Imperial facility. What do you know? But the title of this episode, seriously, do the creators at Lucasfilm even know what the title means? I kept wondering, is it metaphorical? Was the title happening like spiritually or something? But I really could not see anything that matched the title. So let me know if there was anything in this episode that matched the title. On another side note, every cookie shop and every nation that this show airs in is going to be sold out of blue macaroons for the rest of the week, and they're not even going to know why unless they watch the show. I suppose it's good that I'm not a huge fan of blue favors in general, and I have to avoid cookies with that much sugar in them, because I wouldn't be able to get any if I was. Anyhow, that is my mostly spoiler-free review. The takeaway is that this second season, and probably the first if you know what to look for, is drawing heavily on the visual library that exists in the collective cultural head to make these episodes so nostalgic without overloading us with member berries. And I think that's very clever of them, because the member berries in season 1 were fun, but member berries get annoying if they get too concentrated. So in this show, they're not going for member berries, they're going for something else. In chapter 9, it was the Godfather that they drew on, in that big scene where Mando has the shootout right in front of the kid. That was definitely Godfather imagery, something that exists in the heads of most modern moviegoers. In Chapter 10, it was the classic Western where the gunslinger has to escort a lady to her husband. In Chapter 11, it was a visual homage to Jaws. In Chapter 12, it was an offhand reference to The Hobbit. None of these are long or critical scenes, and all of the references are very, very subtle, woven into the story as a whole. You couldn't remove them without damaging the story. They're that critical. You don't really notice them at the time. They're just little visual shorthand images that snuggle this episode into your brain so that it shares a place with one of your beloved childhood memories carved out for it long ago by one of these cinematic masters. And I guess really that's what all storytellers try to do. They try to connect to something inside of you. I just think it's very clever how they're doing it this way. So what do you think, my wonderful viewers? Were the creators deliberately referencing The Hobbit, or are they just drawing on the same cultural well that we all share and they didn't even know what they were doing? Leave a like below if you agree, and leave a comment below chopping my analysis up like tasty dwarven pie if you disagree. Peace out, my wonderful viewers.